Pujya Swami Bodhomayanandaji, who gave such a beautiful Ashevachan. I thought if the meeting had ended at that point, all of us would have carried a great message in our minds. Some speeches are like that. I only feel that great message is being interfered with by subsequent speeches. Mr. Rajiv Kumar took us to another level, a level of great abstraction of Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. Now I have a great difficulty of bringing all of you down to the streets to talk about economics. And Dr. Vinay Babu, who as soon as he came back, I told him whatever be the communication skills of anyone, no one can communicate as well as a teacher. So he enthralled all of you with very relevant connect between educational institutions and commercial institutions. Sri Balda Ashok, Secretary to Swami Vivekananda City Committee. Sri Ayush, he is the Swami Vivekananda National Yuva Pramukh, and he is responsible for bringing me to stand before all of you. I was not only a student of the Vivekananda College in Chennai, I was a product of Swami Vivekananda and the Ramakrishna Mission. I am from a village. In that village, there was practically no one who knew English, and so I was educated in a Tamil medium school. We read all subjects other than English only in Tamil, and English also we wrote in Tamil, mugged it up and reproduced it in English script. This is the kind of education all of us underwent. When I came to the Vivekananda College, the biggest problem I faced was that everything was in English. And it is a monk of Swami Vivekananda order, Ramakrishna order, whom I approached. Swamiji, what will I do? I am all at sea. I am from a village and I can't understand much of what is being talked about in the college. He told me that the easiest way to learn a language is to keep on looking at the person who talks. His body language will communicate what his actual language communicates. So in 3 months I was able to understand English, and of course my life turned afterwards. And I understood this country, its culture, its tradition, its history, its way of life, its diversities, only through Swami Vivekananda. And his thoughts shaped me, and my association with the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, which was a continuation of my ideological shaping up by Swami Vivekananda, gave me an understanding about life, and my capacity to react to situations based on the context in which this country is placed made me understand my own association with other business or profession better, because I never felt I was an individual just working for myself. And this credit for making me a part of a larger idea of India, the nation, the society, and the culture goes to the order to which Swami Bodhomayananda belongs. In 1991, when this tsunami of globalization struck India, being associated with the corporate world, close advisor to some, even closer friend of some, there was total confusion as to what India, Indian industry, Indian business, Indian government, Indian lawmakers, Indian policy makers should be doing. confusion means that kind of confusion should never strike any country. And it struck many countries. You know, two great thoughts acted as two critical poles of the world, the socialist thought and the free market thought, both of which evolved in the last 100 years. And they were regarded as competitors to one another. And the main competitor to the market capitalist thought collapsed in 1989 with the collapse of the Berlin Wall. And so anyone who advocated, articulated, and even felt convinced by the socialist ideology, there was a massive defection. And there was a wholesale defection, with the result the whole world was moving in the same direction in which the free market world was moving. That was the total irreducible effect of globalization. So at that time there was tremendous amount of confusion as to what India should be doing. And many Indian businessmen were told that it is going to be global. Business is not going to be local. It's not going to be Indian. So you need global level operations, global level capacity, global level capital, global level talent. And so it's impossible for Indians to do business in India unless you have the capacity to do business at a global level. And great Indian business groups were told it is better for you to sell off your manufacturing capacity because you can't build up global level capacity. Even institutions like the Tatas were told that you can't manufacture steel because your capacity to manufacture steel is so small. How are you going to match the global level capacities that are being built? You can't manufacture your commercial vehicles. And so it is much better you concentrate on your core capacity, which is the Tata consultancy services, and better sell off the rest. You can understand what could have been the trauma that the Indian industry, Indian policy makers were undergoing. So it was in this situation that I had a light from Swami Vivekananda and Mahatma Gandhi. Even when Swami Vivekananda wanted to understand India, he didn't go to libraries. He didn't read books. He started traveling across the country. He became a parivrajaka, an addressless monk, traveling across the country to understand what this country was. Unless we go back these days to understand what this country was, what is its state of the people, we can never understand what this man did. And it is inconceivable that a man who saw the kind of India that unfolded before him, an India of poverty, hunger, illiteracy between 1880 and 1900, India underwent 23 large famines which it has never witnessed in its life. Millions of people died because our food products were exported. It was that India which he saw. But beneath that India he saw a very different India. An India which can show light to the world. And I will come to it a little later. But an India which he could never have studied in books or libraries or heard in lectures, he experienced that India. And he went to America in 1893 when he spoke in that conference of World Parliament of Religions. He spoke only 471 words and changed the course of the discourse at the World Parliament of Religions and of the world itself. He revealed a secret which the world never knew. He said, I come from a civilization, a culture, a tradition, where our religion accepts all religions, our gods accept all gods, our people accept all gods. A fact which was not known to the rest of the world. And they were trying to find whether their God is superior or other God is superior by having a boxing match, as Swami Vivekananda said. It is to that ignorant world he took the light and said that all religions have the same goal. This truth he revealed in just 471 words. And he came back to India, and that is where I will begin my lecture on what I understood India to be when I started traveling across the country. He came back and said, as it was made out, as this particular part was part of the presentation which they made about the 150th anniversary of Swami Vivekananda's birth, in which he says, I am not a believer in astrology and I don't dream, but I see a vision. The vision where Bharata Mata is sitting on the throne and ruling this world. Anyone who lived in Vivekananda's time, where there was complete acceptance of defeat by this ancient civilization, politically, morally, culturally, civilizationally, politically. The man stood up and said, we are ruling the world. Anyone who have thought that something has gone wrong with Swamiji's capacity to understand is mad. And now I bring you to 12th January 2012, in the 150th anniversary of Swami Vivekananda. The National Intelligence Council of America, which is the think tank attached to the CIA, Central Intelligence, came out with a report as to what the world will be in 2030. And the report said there will be only three major world powers which will be called global powers, and that is China, India and America. They analyzed the military capacities of India, intellectual capabilities of India, educational potential of India and the economic growth prospects of India, and said by 2030 India will emerge as one of the three world powers, and by 2060 it will overtake China. These are not researches which are done by very ordinary minds with ordinary tools. It is with a great amount of historical data, with current input in terms of technology, science, human resource potentials, demographic potentials. All these are put together to arrive at this conclusion. And so what Swami Vivekananda envisioned, not dreamt, not went to an astrologer to understand the capacities and the potentialities of India to rise as a superpower. He envisioned, and we are realizing the great potential today in front of us, and many of us would live to see that India. This potential he saw when he traveled across the country. Mahatma Gandhi came to India at the end of the First World War, when the First World War was nearing its end. A messy situation. The revolutionary movement had been crushed. Aurobindo had gone from Bengal to Pondicherry. The national leadership had collapsed. The idea of India was in question. So, Mahatma Gandhi, when he came here, he came with such high reputation of having shaken the British in South Africa. And when he came, many rich people invited him. And he was the guest in more of the richest people's homes and offices. But somehow his mind felt that it was not his area of operation. And first he was taken in a chariot of horses. Then people removed the horses and began pulling the chariot themselves. They felt he was God. The God had a great confusion in his mind. And so Gokhale told him that you can never understand this country unless you take a travel across the country. Mahatma Gandhi came to India at the end of the First World War, when the First World War was nearing its end. A messy situation. The revolutionary movement had been crushed. Aurobindo had gone from Bengal to Pondicherry. The national leadership had collapsed. The idea of India was in question. So, Mahatma Gandhi, when he came here, he came with such high reputation of having shaken the British in South Africa. And when he came, many rich people invited him. And he was the guest in more of the richest people's homes and offices. But somehow his mind felt that it was not his area of operation. And first he was taken in a chariot of horses. Then people removed the horses and began pulling the chariot themselves. They felt he was God. The God had a great confusion in his mind. And so Gokhale told him that you can never understand this country unless you take a travel across the country. So he told him, you move across the country and then you will come to the conclusion as to what you should do. It is the travel across this country which made that great man feel that he should identify with the common man, and then only he can transform the life and the history of this country. And that is how he completely changed his dress and identified with the ordinary farmer in this country. So these two examples made me feel that when there is utter confusion in this country, the intellectuals, the policymakers, the economists, the leaders with whom I had lot of association, they had all run out of ideas. So I decided to take a travel across the country. I began my travel in Ludhiana, Batala, Rajkot, Jamnagar, Morbi, right down to Thoothukudi. I visited 42 industrial clusters in a matter of 2 years, 2.5 years. And I virtually shut down my profession to understand the economic potentiality of India, the manufacturing capabilities of India, the competence of the ordinary Indian. I knew the corporate world, I knew the intellectuals, I knew the media, but I did not know about the ordinary Indian, his competence, his capabilities. Then I realized that the bottom spread of India is so powerful, so strong, so capable, that India would be able to stand on its own. So I began traveling across the country to share my thoughts as to what Indian economy should be, its policy making should be, how it should handle the world. And at that time we were facing a tsunami of opinion against us. I still remember I addressed the Administrative Staff College of India in Hyderabad. A large number of intellectuals, academics had assembled to listen to me because I was giving an alternative perspective, a counterpoint to the Indian economic thinking at that time. So when he said that India does not need foreign investments, Indian capacity to finance is so high, provided your taxation policies are adjusted, your black money turns into white money, and savings will begin to rise, and then you don't need foreign investments. Nobody believed. And one professor, I think he was an ex-army man, he stood up and said, people like you must be shot dead because you are taking the country 500 years back. All that I am saying is that was the kind of opposition we faced for giving an alternative thought, something different. Now we have statistics for 20 years. 1991 to 2011. We started in 1992-93 saying that India can grow only with foreign capital because India doesn't have adequate capital for itself. At that time, statistics is being cited to show that we save about 23% of the GDP and we invest 24%. On a capital output ratio of 4:1, we produce 6% growth. So we need to go to 32% investment. We need extra 8% investment more to produce 8% growth rate. Then only we can handle unemployment and then rise in production, exports, and all kinds of theoretical model was being built on that 8% foreign investment which is needed to push up the growth rate of India to 8%. So we opened all the sectors of India for foreign investment, and we all said that this is not going to work because there is no country which can invest as much money as you need, because most countries from which you are expecting money are themselves borrowing money. You know, the country from which you are expecting investment, the United States of America, it is borrowing at the rate of $2.5 trillion a year today. 75% of the savings is generated in Asia, and that one country alone borrows the 75% of the global savings. So we said the countries from which you are expecting investment are not the countries which are going to invest. They are borrowing and reinvesting, and this kind of economics is not the economics which either Adam Smith conceived or any other person who articulated the market economic theories. They didn't conceive this. India will have to realize its potential. It has very high potentials. And that was revealed to me when I went to Ludhiana. I saw such a tremendous amount of technical growth, manufacturing, where the world cycle manufacturers were sourcing their spare parts requirements. There was no engineering college. Engineering college was produced by industry, not vice versa. That is the same case with Tirupur, Namakkal, Karur, anywhere you went. So I said the ordinary people of India have such tremendous amount of competence, manufacturing skill, hard work, savings. There is community social capital and there is family social capital which is driving the manufacturing of India. This was all an empirical study. We didn't have any data at that time. So we found that India was bound to rise, even the government couldn't stop it. This was the view that we had at that time, and how that view was realized, and I am going to tell you now. So India began its journey, and I think one of the breaks that took place in India was in 1965, 66, 67, when the tax rates were moderated, which made many people tax compliant. And you see the result later as to how the Indian savings went up from 23% of the GDP to as high as 37% of the GDP in 2009. And our family savings went up from 19% to 29%. And you know, the total foreign investment that was received between 1991 and 2011 was just 1.2% of the total investment made in India. 98.8% of the investment was generated within India. This shook the world. Because never in the history of emerging economies, including China, any country developed without very substantial foreign investment. India did. Unless we ask this question, how and why it did not become clear in the minds of the policymakers, economists, the media, and the intellectual discourse in India, how it missed this point. Unless we realize it, we will not be able to understand what are the potentialities of India and how India will march forward. I will now take you back to 1992, when Dr. Manmohan Singh, who is the Prime Minister now, was the Finance Minister. He invited Dr. Jagdish Bhagwati, one of the most well-known economists in America, an Indian born, but he was very well recognized. He was the person who fathered and mothered the WTO. He was called the god of free trade. And he came to India He didn't get Nobel Prize, of course, but his disciple Paul Krugman got the Nobel Prize and almost dedicated it to his guru because he regarded Dr. Jagdish Bhagwati as his guru. When Bhagwati came here, he said, India can develop only if they follow the model I suggest. Because Dr. Manmohan Singh was so desperate. He said, give me some idea to come out of this mess. He said, I am giving you this idea. And he gave a 72-page paper which used to appear on the website of the Finance Ministry. It has been quite secretly taken away, I don't know why. In which 3 pages, Dr. Jagdish Bhagwati dealt with about the family system in India and particularly the role of women in deciding the family budget. Dr. Jagdish Bhagwati said that in India the families are saving 19%, up to 19% of the GDP. And unless this savings is brought down to 9 to 10% and the balance savings is converted into expenditure, you can never grow. And if you cut down your savings, increase your expenditure, consumption will increase, sales will increase, production will increase, employment will increase, the whole nation will be on the path of growth. But the impediment to this is the women of India who are stingy, they are not spending. You must somehow make them spend. And he said, your products are so poor, the Indian women are not going to be enticed to buy these products. They are very responsible. They are hemmed in by the responsibility to build up their families, to educate their children, to get their daughters married off, and look after their parents. They are always weighed in by responsibilities. So their desires are suppressed. And you must bring goods from abroad. Jewelry, textiles, beauty items. You must bring all this and put it in public view, in big malls, so that the desire of the women dominates their responsibilities and they begin to buy these things, and by that the Indian savings will reduce and expenditure will increase. The government began implementing all this. They cut down the tariff rates and they promoting the imports, and then foreign companies came and set up their shops here, and newspapers and media were getting huge advertisements, and they were all very happy that so much of advertisement revenue is coming. They began clapping for this liberalization and globalization and foreign promotion of foreign trade. And I am part of the media, so I understood what it is. No one will speak against this kind of irresponsible economics because the media was part of the game. Educational institutions, research institutions, economists, policy makers were part of the game because that was the tsunami of opinion that was created in its favor. But you see what happens. And all this whipping up of this total scenario to change India into a consumerist society, it failed because the Indian women did not oblige these policies. They sang the advertisement songs but did not buy the goods. This is the spiritual, cultural, economic tradition of India. That is what has made India a power in spite of government policies, not because of government policies. Today, if Indian savings, family savings has gone up from 19% to 29% of the GDP in 2009, it is because of these cultural responsibilities which the women of India were unwilling to exchange for their personal desires. This shook the world. So much so that in 2010, the Goldman Sachs, which is supposed to be the top banker in the world, it came out with a report called the Global Economic Paper number 187, which is available on the net, any of you can go through it. In that paper, the Goldman Sachs said that we thought at one point that India would need $400 billion of investment in infrastructure, and all of us were told that kind of investment India could never afford. And so obviously we need foreign investment. You throw open everything, then only you will get foreign investment. You cannot throw open only that sector. You have to throw open all sectors, then only you will get investment in any sector. This was the kind of economic discourse. This was the kind of policy promotion that was going on by every conceivable means with very little alternative thinking or argument being entertained. $400 billion we need. Goldman Sachs paper 187 dated October 2010 says what I am telling you now. This $400 billion estimate has now risen to $1.7 trillion. But India does not need even $1 of investment from outside because the Indian families are generating so much savings that they don't need any foreign investment at all. It estimates that by 2016, India's savings to GDP ratio will go up to 40% and will sustain at that level till 2026. And the annual savings in India will be $800 billion, which is equal to all the bank advances today. This will be the annual savings every year. This is what the Goldman Sachs paper said. So the entire appraisal of the Indian economy has undergone a change. The media has not changed. Public discourse has not changed. The economists have not changed their views. But the world has changed its views on India. And the Goldman Sachs paper says the Indian infrastructure program till 2026 will drive not only the Indian economy, but also the global economy. These facts are unknown because no educational institution, no research institution, no MBA courses, no IITs have been able to grasp what is India. I will relate my own experience with the IIT Bombay. They invited me for a lecture in the year 2010, December. So in that lecture, ahead of me, Adi Godrej spoke. He made a brilliant speech. And he said, we understood everything in this world. We understood culture, we understood God, we understood philosophy, we understood spiritualism, we understood culture, traditions, everything. And we knew astronomy. But we did not know economics. Because of that, we were economically underachievers. And only because of liberalization and globalization, India has begun to understand the value of wealth. We are producing wealth. We are becoming a wealthy society. Our standard of living is increasing. Until then, we were having only the Hindu rate of growth, which is a slow rate of growth. This Hindu rate of growth, you must mark. I am going to tell you how this terminology came and what kind of damage it did to the entire brand of India. When he spoke, the entire IIT faculty, students, research scholars stood up and clapped. I was to speak next. I saw a whole civilization being humiliated, and I have to speak next, and I have to speak the truth. So when I stood up, I said, I was really stunned that I have to speak certain basic truth to a high educational institution like the IIT. That speech is available on the net in YouTube. Any of you who is willing to invest 1 hour and 20 minutes can go through that speech. I said that Adi Godrej spoke about Hindu rate of growth. You know, how did that term come? In 1978, Professor Raj Krishna was a socialist economist. He was also an advisor to the government of India. So somebody asked him, gentlemen, we are following the same policies which you people prescribe. Which policies are followed by Russia, Poland, East European countries? They are going so fast. But the same policies we are following, you are the advisor, and why are we not growing so fast? He said, what do? We are Hindus, so we can grow only at a slow rate. In spite of socialism, you can never grow fast. I don't know what that man did. Maybe he tried to escape the question by a bad answer. He gave the bad answer, ran away. Robert McNamara picked up that one term. He must have addressed at least a dozen conferences all over the world. Here is a country, one of the most populous countries, second most populous country in the world, which can never support itself. It has to be supported by the world. I am begging the world nations on behalf of India. This is what he used to say as the World Bank president in convention after convention. That is how the world Hindu rate of growth was globalized. This was 1978. In 1983, something stunning happens in the world. Paul Bayrock was a Belgian economist. He came out with his study of the global economy from 1750 to 1900 and shook the world. He said in 1750, if you put the statistics of the world growth rates, China was leading with 34% of world GDP, India 24.5%, America and England put together 2%. And the entire thing changes in 1900. India and China put together 8%. China 6.2%, India 1.8%. America and England 42%. In this 150 years, the world turns upside down, wealth shifts from Asia to Europe. The West could not digest this. Great historians like Ferdinand Braudel, he said that we must admit that the standard of living in India and China till the 17th century was higher than our standard of living. They were more prosperous than us. This cannot be denied. It was too difficult for imperial powers to digest it, and so they constituted a development studies institute under Angus Madison, the greatest economic historian ever produced in the world. And he carried on research, and he was supplied all kinds of human resources to support his study. And the question that he put to himself was, if I have to read it out, I'll tell you what Angus Madison had postulated to himself. Angus Madison perceived the issue at stake was this: if Paul Bayrock is right, I don't believe he's right. If he's right, I don't believe means Angus Madison. Then much more of the backwardness of the third world presumably has to be explained by colonial exploitation, and much less of Europe's advantage can be due to scientific precocity, centuries of slow accumulation, and organizational financial superiority. All this do not matter. If Paul Bayrock says is true, then India and China have inherent economic potential which we have overturned through colonial conquest. Then he set out to do the research from 1983, and he came out with the study in 2001. The world economic history, a millennial perspective. He didn't study only 150 years. He studied 2000 years of economic history of the world. And he said in the first year of the common era, the year in which Christ was born, as it is believed to be, India was leading the world with 34% of world GDP and China was 28%. The lead continues 1000 years. 1400 it continues. 1015, 1500 India and China equal. 1600 China overtakes India. 1700 India overtakes China. The economic game was only between these two countries. It has settled the world economic history that India was an economic giant for 1700 years. It is not that we were an economic failure because of spiritualism. Because of spiritualism, we were an economic success. We knew how to handle money and God together. We never saw money as God. We saw God as money. So this society would not waste anything. It would turn waste into wealth. The biggest problem in our homes, you see what? You would like to throw something out, your mother or sister or wife will prevent it. Don't do it. Because they always see in that waste wealth. It is the masculine quality to waste. It is the feminine quality to save. You know, femininity in India is so strong. And this goes to the spiritual roots of Indian social life. When I went to America in the year 2001, I had taken 3 pictures. Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati. Many of my friends asked me, where are you taking these pictures? I'll tell you how. So I was talking in a meeting, dominantly of white women, in a private house, and I showed them these pictures. They said, what is it? He said, these are our women goddesses. Goddesses? God can be women also? Because the concept of God in the West is a man. Even though God is formless, he is a man. So I said, these are our women gods. This is the goddess of learning. This is the goddess of wealth. This is the goddess of power. Because they have no understanding that God could be in women form. I said, the God transcends man and woman form. And then I explained the concept of Ardhanarishwara. Then I told them one more secret. You are only thinking God can be women. In our country, women can be gods. Then I explained to them the concept of Kanya Puja, Suhasini Puja. Many of them wiped out their tears. You know why? They don't know this paradigm at all. The respect for women which this society had generated and sustained for hundreds of years sustained the economy of India. It is only when women's respect was brought down in this society because of colonial intervention, when man became the breadwinner and she became the caretaker, there was no such a distinction in the past. Man and woman together used to do economic avocations, whether it is in the field or in the shop, anywhere. It is the office-going model which developed in the last 300 years that brought down the stature of the Indian women. And so India has a very different economic genius which I have experienced. And that is manifest in the economic performance of India, which I will reveal to you in the next 2-3 minutes. You know, in the year 2005, an economic census was taken, the first economic census of India. In that they came out with an astounding finding that there are 43 million non-farming enterprises in India, 75% of them unregistered with any authority. That means 30 million business units in India are functioning without the government knowing. And these 43 million non-farming enterprises employ 100 million people, for which capital from banks and organized sources is just 5%. This shook the Indian economic policy makers. The second economic census is going on today. Now, by 2015 it will come out. This became, and this produces 40% of India's manufacturing. And if India is becoming a manufacturing giant today for itself, you know, if you look at the Indian economic model, the most important part of it is a domestic economy, domestic saving, domestic investment, domestic demand, domestic supplies. India relies very little on imports, except in the last 9 years, which I will reveal to you. It was a criminal negligence of this government which has put India in this difficulty, in which it should never have been. In fact, when I wrote 3 articles in the Indian Express, challenged them to dispute the figures which I had mentioned. They always said, India is incurring current account deficit which is putting down the value of the Indian rupee because of oil imports and gold imports. It's a blatant lie. I will now give you the figures. The total current account deficit incurred by India in the last 9 years till March 2013, is $339 billion. Just before this government came, India had a current account surplus of $22 billion. The world began rating India as something important, not only because the domestic economy was growing, that it was able to generate export surpluses without being export dependent. Most important. India was never an export dependent economy like China is, like the East European countries were. India's domestic demand, domestic savings, domestic capital sustained the Indian economy, and if we produced state surplus, it was not an export dependent surplus. Export surplus between 2002 and 2004 was $22 billion, not export surplus, current account surplus. In the next 9 years, I am going to read out how the current account deficit arises. In the first year, 2004-05, the current account deficit was 2.7 billion. And 2005, 6, 6, 7, 10 billion. 7, 8, 16 billion. 8, 9, 28 billion. 9, 10, 38 billion. 10, 12, 48 billion. 11, 12, 78 billion. 12, 13, 89 billion. That's how India crashed. And for this crash, oil was not responsible. It is the capital goods import which was responsible. The average capital goods import in India during the earlier regime was about 10 billion a year. Now you see what happens. In 2004-05, it becomes 26 billion. 5, 6, 38. 6, 7, 47. 70, 72, 66, 79, 99, $92 billion annually. The total was $587 billion. When the capital goods import increases, obviously the manufacturing should increase. That is the idea of bringing capital goods, because they are superior technology, superior machinery, more efficient production. But the manufacturing growth in India becomes less than half. In the first 4 years of UPA rule, the manufacturing growth was 11%. The next 5 years, when the capital goods import was $407 billion, the next 4 years, the average growth in manufacturing was less than 5%. And the capital goods industry takes a negative growth rate. BHEL shuts down half its capacity. Jayaprakash industry shuts down. L&T shuts down. This is what rocked India. Our entire 9-year petrol bill is $515 billion only. Capital goods import $587 billion. It is this which killed India. And it did not happen just like that. You gave zero-rated import duty for import of capital goods, because Anil Ambani wanted it. Because of giving reduction in tariff, India lost 23 lakh crores in 5 years. And that transformed into fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit again weakened the Indian rupee. This I have written in great detail in the Indian Express. If India is in trouble, if our rupee has crashed, if inflation is up, many people think that inflation and rupee value are different. No. When you are paying more rupees for the same goods, that has to be charged on to the consumers, whether in terms of oil price or in terms of any other import. With the result, inflation was also triggered by current account deficit. And this in turn resulted in fiscal deficit because of the huge cuts in the excise duty and import duty which we gave. We cooked up the Indian economy I don't think there is proper economic discourse in India. There is no free press which can challenge the government. Come out to the facts. Why are you telling a lie? It is oil and gold. We are economic illiterates. We are in problem. But this is only temporary. You need not have to worry that India is in a great distress. India is still a country of very high level of discipline. It may not have discipline in the road. It is discipline at the family level. In fact, even Chidambaram, who is not a great respecter of India, he said Indian savings rate is very high, Indian families are responsible. You are trying to make them as irresponsible as the American families are, but you failed. You know why? It is because of our great tradition, culture, spiritualism. This has nothing to do. This is actually the social capital of India, which you cannot create by law. You cannot legislate this into existence. In America, they are trying. You know, in America, 41% of the babies are born for unmarried women. 21% of them are born for school-going children. In England, it is 47%. In Scandinavian countries, it is 56%. Babies which are born have been nationalized because the parents will not look after them. A child which is born is the property of the state. That is why one of the Indian women who was there, his child was also regarded as the property of the state because she fed the child with the hand. The child inspector came and said, "How dare you feed the child with your hand, so unhygienic." They took the child away and arrested the woman. Can you see the paradigm difference in which you are operating? And these Scandinavian countries are supposed to be the human development index, so high they are, number 1 and number 2. We are all supposed to be moving towards these countries. All 50% of the professionals are women, 50% of the parliamentarians are women, 50% of the civil servants are women. So there is man and woman equality, and that is the highest that you can aspire for. And so India should be like Sweden. India should be like Norway. You know, 67% of the men and women live together. Anybody with any length of time and as many children which are born are the property of the state. This economics may apply to a population of 5.5 million or 8 million, which is the population of those countries, which is probably less than the population of Chennai. I don't know about Hyderabad. And these are all economic models for us. How ridiculous it is that you want to transform our country into those countries. 51% of the families in America do not have the father and the mother living together. America is giving tax concessions for husband and wife to live together. Do you want to say that is for which husband and wife will live together? Because you cannot legislate a family. You cannot legislate affection. You cannot legislate reverence. You cannot legislate respect. You cannot legislate responsibility. But you can destroy all this by legislation. In India, there is a domestic violence act. In every house there is violence because human beings are violent. That is why Ramakrishna mission is needed. Government of India cannot solve the problem. There is violence in every home. In Sweden, women have formed association to beat up men. You can see in the web, you can see Wikipedia. Because the married couples are not there. It is only live-in partners, friends living together. Even there, the boyfriends beat the girls. Because the human mind is the same whether he is the husband or boyfriend. The human mind is basically violent. You have to cure them. That's what Swami said. You are potentially divine. You have to become one. And so in India, Domestic Violence Act was passed. Far-reaching progressive legislation, media, editorials, women organizations, all men organizations also joined because they should not be regarded as backward in their approach. You know, what does this say? This will dynamite any family. If husband and wife quarrel, and one of them, possibly the wife, she gets so upset and calls the policeman, the corrupt policeman comes into the family to settle the dispute between husband and wife. If you go beyond that, there is corrupt judiciary. I make it bold to say, judiciary is corrupt. And you want the judiciary, police, lawyer, court, to settle family issues, which is the most viable economic institution of India, producing 29% of India's GDP savings. It is destroyed in America. In America, there is no savings today. Family responsibilities are passed on to the government. Taking care of parents, elders, infirm people, unemployed people, these are the responsibilities of the government because there is no family to take care of them. And with the result, if you don't have any responsibility, the propensity to save, which is very important in economics to maintain savings rate, that goes down. In America, family savings as a percentage of the total savings has come down from 80% in 1960 to minus 20% in 2006 third quarter because people began spending more than what they were earning because they have no responsibility in life. The responsibilities which the government took up on behalf of the families, family responsibilities, families were nationalized. And the government was privatized. And this is called modern economics. Maintaining bridges, roads, laying roads, having airports, seaports, these are all normally the water supply, these are supposed to be the responsibilities of the government. Taking care of the parents, infirm, elders, unemployed people, these are all supposed to be the responsibilities of the family. This is reversed. The government will take care of the parents, it will take care of the unemployed people, it will take care of the single mother, it will take care of infirm people. But the private people will build roads, bridges. I mean, it's a perverse economics which will never fit into a family-based society. My 30 years of research, unchallenged by any economist in India, nobody is willing to have a debate with me. And India is an economic giant not because of the state, it is because of the people. In 2005 when I was in America, in San Jose, I gave a speech which is available on the YouTube. Indian economy is basically feminine in character. It is womanly qualities in this society, moderate consumption, high savings. You have very high responsibility when you go into a shop whether to buy it or not. See what the modern economics is. I am going to read out something to you which will shock. What is the total goal and aim of modern economics? In a paper titled On the Anthropology of Modernity, Marshall Chalins, a prominent American anthropologist. Anthropology is the study of human evolution, how the West has evolved. A late classic of the genre was Walter Rosto's Stages of Economic Growth, with its unilinear sequence of 5 developmental stages from traditional societies to the age of mass consumption. Rosto must have been among the first to perceive the culmination of human social evolution was shopping. Buying is the ultimate end of human evolution. See, these are the question answers? Are there more?
No, I'll be reading out the question answers.
No, are there anything more?
There are more. There are more.
Please get them.
Yeah.
explicitly argued as an alternative to Marxist stages of progress, Rostow's theses appear as a mirror image with the added advantage of turning left into right twice over. Common to many theories of development was a cheerful sense of cultural tragedy, the necessary disintegration of traditional societies that functioned in Rostow's scheme as a precondition for economic takeoff. Foreign domination was needed to accomplish this salutary destruction because no society can develop the capacity to destroy itself, so foreigners have to come and destroy. Since otherwise customary relationship of traditional production will set a ceiling on economic growth, by its own providential history, Europe has been able to develop itself. But according to Rostow, the other people have to be shocked out of their backwardness by an intrusive alien force. No revolutionary himself, Rostow could agree with Marx that in order to make an omelette, you must crack the eggs first. This is the modern economic theory. This is not what is being discussed in our universities, in our think tanks, in our media. Modernity is not dress. It is not language. It is not urban living. Modernity means sexual revolution. Modernity means premarital sex. Modernity means teenage pregnancy. This is modernity. Because high level of individualism dominates not only the political philosophy, it also dominates the economic philosophy. This country has been able to resist all this because of the huge amount of spiritual underpinning of the society which makes people responsible. You have responsibility to parents, you have responsibility to elders, you have responsibility to unemployed people, you have responsibility even to a neighbor. In America, 30 years, two people will be residing together. They will be even smiling at each other. They will not know each other. I'll give you a small example. I was in America in 1992 when I was traveling. My host's child was playing with the neighbor's child. He was telling the child, don't play with the child, ask him to go out and you come inside. I said, well, the beautiful lawn, both of them are playing. He said, what are you saying? If my neighbor's child falls down and gets injured in my compound, he will send me legal notice for $25,000. That is the relationship between neighbors. But in India, at about the same time, one of my friends, he was driving to Bombay for a very important appointment with a banker for a business proposal. And as he was driving, the neighbor's wife came, sir, my husband has chest pain. He just drove the car into his house, put the man took him to the hospital. His bank appointment went up in smoke. In fact, I asked that friend, how did you decide? He said, what is there to take a decision? If I had not done that, if something had happened to this man, I would never have lived in peace for my entire life. There is a relationship between everybody and everybody in India. There is no relationship between even parents and wards in the countries in which these economic theories have evolved. That is why India will be a winner. That is why Asia will be a winner, because of our relationships. The total social security burden which American government has undertaken because of the failure of the relationships, its today's value is $104 trillion, whereas America's GDP is only $16 trillion. In India, the entire social security is privatized, not by any law, but because of our idea of dharma. Unless we understand economics in that sense, we have to teach an alternative economics to the world. And we will be teaching because India is a rising power. People would like to study India, even if you don't study India. Even if IIT doesn't study India. When I completed the speech in the IIT, all the students, many research scholars came and surrounded me and said, sir, we feel so shy. We know nothing about India. Will you run a course for us? That is what made me accept their invitation to be a visiting faculty to run a course for them every year. We suffer from enormous ignorance about India. Swami Vivekananda could intuitively see the capacity of India to rise as a global power, which we are becoming today. So I feel that the first thing all of us should understand is to know about India and its competence, its potentialities. We suffer from unnecessary inferiority complex by benchmarking ourselves with culture, civilizations, polity, and way of life, which is collapsing. America has printed $3.2 trillion in the last 5 years. That is what has made America survive. Europe has printed $1.8 trillion. That is what making Europe survive. Japan is printing $1.4 trillion. That is what making Japan survive. This is economics today. Printing currency and living. No one knows how long it will continue. They have bankrupted the people and strengthened the national economy. And when the national economy is weakened, nation is weak as well as the people are weak. Our people are not bankrupt. The government may be bankrupt.